Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
Today's VHS selection is The Breakfast Club from 1985, written and directed by John Hughes. If you have not seen The Breakfast Club, please pause the podcast, head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel, watch the VHS video, subscribe so you don't miss future recommendations, and then come on back to the podcast because we are going to be discussing it in depth, at length, filled with spoilers. Here we go. The Breakfast Club. For me, this film has always been there. I mean, when I think about the movies I've seen the most in my lifetime, it's like Jaws and The Breakfast Club and The Terminator. And we've talked about two of those already. So today is the trifecta. Now you know where I'm coming from and the guidance I received in my youth. We had this tape from television and I would just watch it all the time. Because I also had an older brother and an older sister who were in high school in and around the time in the 80s. So for me, it was like kind of like, oh, this is what their day is like. I can't wait till my day is like that. I can't wait to go to detention. It's going to be awesome. So I watched this movie a lot growing up. For me, this film really comes down to the writing and the crafting of the characters and then just the ensemble performance. There really is no star. There are strong performances and strong characters, but really, if you were to change any of these actors, I feel like it would change the film in a very different kind of a way. But that's kind of where I'm coming from with The Breakfast Club and why I wanted to share it with not only the world, but specifically with you guys. And so I'm just curious, where did you guys find The Breakfast Club?
I thought it sucked. No, I'm kidding. I think the first time I saw this, I was always aware of it, but I think the first time I really saw it was probably high school. I love a bunch of John Hughes other movies, so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
So you were aware of John Hughes going into the film?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Because, yeah, for me, this was kind of like the gateway. I mean, we also had Ferris Bueller, Tape from TV, and Weird Science and everything. But this was really like where I begin with John Hughes as a filmmaker. As a writer, probably Vacation or Mr. Mom.
Right. Yeah,
but,
right.
You know, as far as a filmmaker and his vision and his storytelling, The Breakfast Club is where I enter the picture.
Yeah, for me in my house, we you know, not that we didn't watch, you know, those other films, but for me, Ferris Bueller was the one of his, and I have a massive love for Weird Science as well.
Yeah, me, it was the first time I watched it. And to be frank, I didn't know about this movie. I knew the title, but that's all. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know the director before, so I haven't watched any other of his films. But I was surprised to see that it was a success in Europe, apparently, because really, I've never heard of it. I've never seen any retrospective in a theater or a TV broadcast or any reference from this movie in other films or series, or maybe I didn't get the reference. That's the thing. Maybe I didn't get it.
I feel like now that you've seen it, you're going to see it everywhere. And you're going to text me next week and be like, The Breakfast Club is playing at the theater.
Yeah, because I read that on the internet that it was
I don't know
a pop culture reference. So I was surprised, but yeah, maybe now I'm going to get it. I must say that even if I'm not a big fan of teenage movies, I really find it interesting in many ways. But to be frank, the first hour was a bit long for me. And I was like, maybe I'm too old for this kind of movies. But then you have a twist and the last 30 minutes are worth watching, really, definitely. So a good impression, but at first I was like, oh my God, I'm too old. But no, when you watch it until the end, it's worth it. Because you understand who they are, you understand the movie, you understand why we're talking about those kids. At the beginning, I was like, okay, that's a life in a high school, you know. I wasn't really impressed about this movie. But suddenly you understand the whole point of it. And I first watched your VHS episode, so you were saying that it was a mix between comedy and drama. So I could see that they were trying to have comedy in it. And to be frank with you, but maybe it's a cultural thing. I didn't laugh at all. I didn't think it was really amusing, but you can smile sometimes, okay, but it's not comedy for me. But that's maybe it's a cultural thing. But yeah, so I was expecting more dramas in it, and suddenly when they're all together and explaining why they are in detention, you understand that there is a deep message
Mhm.
in the movie. So yeah, I wasn't expecting that way. And yeah, it was really profound, really moving, and it's what I like in movies. I need to have emotion when I watch a movie. And the first hour, I didn't laugh, and I wasn't really entertained emotionally. Let's say that way.
See, I think you need to watch the movie with someone else or with an audience. You know, it's that
Oh,
thing we
maybe.
talked about before,
Mm.
about humor being kind of contagious, you know, because I still laugh at certain parts when I watch this movie. Like when Allison is going through her lunch and she takes out the olive loaf and flicks it on the statue and it sticks to the top of the statue. And then she continues pouring pixie sticks and Captain Crunch on her sandwich and then the meat just like falls off. That's hilarious.
Yeah, not for me, but yeah, as I said, maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know.
Like when Bender is just ripping pages out of the book and mixing up the card catalog, just what he's doing is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Brian chimes in with his little 2 cents and he just throws pages at him, even Allison, when she's just sitting off by herself and drawing that picture, and then she's scratching the dandruff out of her head to make it snow on the picture.
It's like the epitome of teen boredom.
They're not slapstick. They're not goofy. You know, it's that very kind of real humor that you find in life. Even Bender, when he walks into the frame and he just walks right in front of the car and the car stops short. And then Allison gets out and looks into the car and they just peel out, like all those little nuances. It's like, oh man, these are such rich characters.
That's sad. That's not funny.
It's sad when you learn that her family ignores her, and when you first see it and with the light music behind it, and when you're told it's a comedy, it's like, oh yeah, that's funny. I see that. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I've watched it too much. I'm in too deep.
Yeah, I just saw the drama in it. Yeah.
I think another reason that this film endures and connects is I do think it does have a very strong sense of realism. And so, like Anne just said, you know, she connected to the drama, to like the realism and everything. And I think overall, this film just kind of captures high school in a way. And I know that when I finally got to that point in my life in high school, high school is super cliquey.
Mm-hmm.
You just have all these little pockets of like-minded personalities that come together. And so once I got to that point, it's like, oh shit, I'm fucking Allison. That's me. There I am. But I wasn't just Allison. I was like a mix of like Bender, Brian, and Allison.
Same here. I was a theater kid who had a leather jacket and long hair and hung out with the metalheads, but then also was respected by the football team for a performance that I did. When I got to high school, I was definitely Brian, but then like on the way out, I was a amalgamation of all these different personas.
So you were Claire and Bender?
Yeah, well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if a Claire, but definitely a little Bender, definitely a little.
Do you do as good as she does with her lipstick?
I better. I want to hurt my elbow, pat myself on the back, but I'd go better. But probably a little Allison in there too. Could be a little odd at times.
I would say I was a mix with Bender maybe and Allison. And when I was younger in junior school, maybe I was Brian, but it didn't last long, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it was really a representative of what I think American high school. For example, the sporty guy, we don't have that in France. You have admiration for people doing football, and we don't have that. We have soccer. We are really good in soccer. We love soccer. But if you do soccer, if you play soccer, that's good for you, but I don't care. So you know what I'm saying? We won't have a scholarship for that. If you have a scholarship here, it's because you are Brian, but not because you are Andrew. So it was really realistic for Americans, I think. But there are a few things that for me didn't sound realistic in this movie. For example, but maybe it's American, I don't know. Having detention a whole day, it's quite long. I mean, for us, it's when you have an afternoon, it's really because you were in big trouble. a whole day. I think it's crazy. And having an essay during that time, for us, when you're in detention, you copy textbooks, or you clean classrooms or things like that, but you don't have an essay.
I think it's a part of the time in which it was made, because I know that when I was in high school, all day on a Saturday, like, kiss my ass, teach. I'm out of your jurisdiction at that point.
Yeah, when I had
You know?
detention, it was always after school.
Or it was during school. It was like in-house detention, where it's like, yeah, you don't get to go to class, but you still have to do the work. Good luck.
The attitude of the teacher is, for me, really extreme. So maybe they exaggerated the attitude of the teacher, because, it's a movie. You have 90 minutes to get across your message. So maybe that's the point. But I thought it was a bit extreme. But once again, maybe it's something that can happen in America. I don't know.
I think if enough kids step on your feet over the years, it's very easy to become super cynical, as Mr. Vernon has, and a bit jaded as well, because he's been doing it for what was it, 20, 25 years?
Yeah.
He was a teacher. And I mean, I know from my time as a teacher, you have good classes and bad classes, and a bad class can really sour your grapes,
Yeah.
I can understand he's on the edge, I totally understand that. That's the same here. I think all teachers all over the planet, they can feel that. That's okay. The fact is threatening John later in the movie. A teacher doing that, really? To put a student aside and threatening the kid, like, when you get older, I got on you, and I get my revenge or whatever. I mean, that's a bit too much, no? I mean...
Well, again, drama, but also the time period. In the 80s, it was much different than it was in the 90s, and then it was certainly a lot different than it is today. It wasn't the greatest of times, and people didn't really understand social problems the way that we understand them now. People were a lot less sensitive to a person's needs, or a person's character, or a person's personal development.
But then when they sit down and they do that sharing circle, I guess let's call it, right? Going around the room and like, what are you in for, kind of a deal. That's some great stuff, and it got a little teary in a couple spots. And I felt some of those things as a kid, not to the extreme that they did. And it's always going to stand the test of time, I think, because it's a snapshot of a moment in time in suburban America in the 80s, and representative of all those different types of groups of people and who those people will eventually become.
Anne mentioned it. You mentioned it. Let's just dig into it right now. This 20-minute circle scene where we just go round and round, and we learn all we need to about all of these characters that we've spent an hour with up to this point, and they've spent, most of their day with each other. But now the gloves come off, and really everybody's mask is peeled back, and we get to see them for who they really are. They are all vulnerable at different points. I think the first one is actually really Bender, when his home life is in question, and he rolls up his sleeve, and this is what you get in my house when you spill paint in the garage. That's his moment.
Yeah.
But that kind of is almost foreshadowing for this circle scene where everybody else kind of gets their sleeve rolled up,
Yeah. I think the one that got me this time around viewing it was Brian, probably got me the most choked up. I miss Anthony Michael Hall, that version of him. Like, now he kind of always plays the douche in things. I like, what happened to that guy? I like that guy, so, but he's so good at being vulnerable in that section, especially when like what happens when we see each other after this. That part gets me more than him about the grades and the whatever, because these characters are pulled almost into this alternate timeline for a second. Are we going to pretend that we're not friendly? We don't know each other, or that we've shared so much, and when the honest answer is no, we won't be friends. Kind of sucks. It's kind of kick in the gut. You think you make some headway with some people, and you share something, and then for that realization, it kind of sucks. So this time around, that section got me a little teary-eyed.
Yeah, and what I really loved in this sharing circle, as you said, Steve, is you have an image of those kids at the beginning of the movie, And as we said, there are archetypes of students you can have in high school. So you think you pretty know them from the beginning. And suddenly everything turns upside down, you know. You're like, oh my God, this poor Brian, this poor Andrew. I mean, Andrew, you can feel there is something behind this guy. I mean, I had empathy for him from the beginning. I don't know why.
I think that what's interesting is if you look at the Andrew character, right? Everything's above board. He's being very gentlemanlike to Claire and standing up for her, and he's fending off the villainous Bender and telling, I'll drop you and all this other stuff. And when you really think about it, when you get to that sharing circle section, he kind of did the worst thing out of all the people in detention, because Allison's just there because she's got nothing else going on. Bender pulled the fire alarm. Brian wants to kill himself. So when you think about it, he kind of did the worst thing, out of all the kids. But then he's, Mr. Chivalry. Maybe he's trying to make up for it in his own way. And then there's just the obvious overtones of him, the macho. He has to be this macho persona that his father wants him to be at all times. So there's a lot going on there.
I was a bit disappointed about Claire. Okay, it's sad what she's living. It's not because you're rich that you're having an easy life, but I expected something more about her. But I was really blown away by this moment. As I said, I was a bit bored at the beginning of the movie, and suddenly I totally understood the message that people are more complex than what they seem to be, and the social image, especially when you're an adolescent, when you're a teenager. If you think you have the hardest life right now, but you don't know what something else is going through in his life, so never judge someone from the outside. And yeah, it was a very deep message that everybody can understand, even if you're not a teenager. I mean, it talks to you at every stage of your life.
The thing that I love about this scene is that everybody has a card to play, and everybody has something to contribute, and everybody has something significant to contribute. It's not just a one-note scene. There's a lot going on from everybody, and it just keeps going round and round like a very emotional merry-go-round. And I love the line that Allison has about, when you grow up, your heart dies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really poignant idea for a teenager to have, and then for a character to express. And it's a very interesting outlook when you think about this film and you think about the character of Mr. Vernon.
Yeah.
And then the scene that he shares with Carl, and Carl calls him out and says, like, kids haven't changed, you've changed. And that echoes in Allison's comment.
Yeah. There's a sophistication, even though there's some fantastical moments and beats and stuff in this movie, but when you really think about it, if you compare it to the crudeness of one of my personal favorite movies as a kid, Revenge of the Nerds, there's just a sophistication level on this one. And I love Revenge of the Nerds. I love Nerds in Paradise. But there is just a certain level of sophistication with the Breakfast Club that you're not going to get so much, from Panty Raid,
And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
I feel like Bender is the most captivating of the characters.
Without a doubt.
He has a very strong personality, and he is a very strong character, and he's a very interesting character. As I mentioned in the video, he kind of seems like the antagonist for the first half of the film until like Mr. Vernon reveals himself. And by that point, Bender has already kind of stood up for the Breakfast Club. He's the one who leads Vernon away so they can get back to the library and not get in trouble. He takes the hit for the team because to him, he's got 2 months of detention ahead of him anyways. It really doesn't matter. His character just, I think, has a very interesting reveal throughout the film, because he has such a strong wall from the get-go. And then it's like slowly broken down over the course of the film. And Judd Nelson really does such a fantastic job that I feel like this film instead of like helping his career, almost probably hurt his career because people were just expecting Bender.
Mm-hmm.
And Judd Nelson's not really like that. He actually went to a prep school. He was the preppy intellectual kid in his real world. And he was 25 when he played Bender. So he was the oldest cast member, which is great for Bender because then you think like, oh, well, clearly he's been left back a few times. You know, it just adds to his character. I think I mentioned in the VHS, it was originally supposed to be played by John Cusack.
Which I mean, I love John Cusack, but it was not the same animal. I think as far as Judd Nelson's concerned, the Bender character could have really fell into that trap of a one-dimensional, nothing going on thing. Because like when he's having that good old-fashioned pissing contest with Vernon, like, you want another week? And every week he gets like, what the fuck is this kid? Shut up. Like, then when you find out what his home life is like, he's like, this fucking guy doesn't want to be home. He'd rather be there doing that. That's a good payoff. It's a good reveal. It's a good, little nugget if you're paying attention, that the kid doesn't want to be home. He's safer and he's probably happier in detention, which is a sad take on the whole thing. I will say, on a side note, probably my favorite piece of comedy in this movie is when he's playing basketball, but he changes one shoe. That to me is that is, I think that's you could put a button on the character with that. Upon this viewing of it, and now having seen The Outsiders, so close proximity-wise to rewatching The Breakfast Club, I was reminded of the Ponyboy scene when he gets into the car, and him and the Soch, they hash it out and they kind of get to know each other on a human level. Very, very much the vibe of the sharing circle at the end there, just kind of like humanizing each other instead of seeing each other as these phantom stereotypes floating through the hall on a daily basis.
It's funny that you're comparing all the time with The Outsiders, because watching this movie, I was comparing with Bad Boys, actually. It came to my mind right away that the comparison, Bad Boys, the film with Sean Penn, of course. For me, those teenagers have a lot in common, even if you don't see that at first sight. And the environment is not the same, because in Bad Boys, it's a violent environment from the beginning, and they are pushed in the adult world for a surviving reason, let's say that way. But here, it's quite the same, even if the environment is different. Those kids, they have pressure because of adults, and they can't enjoy the moment of adolescence, which is difficult, but could be also a very good moment before entering the adult world. Also, they don't have any perspective on their future because of the adults. And that's what I right away I saw that watching this movie, the comparison with Bad Boys about their future. Those kids, I'm not sure they know what they're gonna become, and when they think about their parents, they freak out, because quite all of them, they have really freaky parents. So, but regarding John Bender, I would say that this guy is a real pain at the beginning, real pain. And I read somewhere that apparently the actor was also a pain to some of his co-stars. But as you said, he did like the method acting. So, I mean, he tried to go undercover in a high school before. So maybe that's why. Maybe he was really committed to his role. So even with his co-stars, apparently, he was a real pain. But it's so moving. It's so touching when just the lunch scene, when everybody is having their lunch, and even their lunch means something about them, and you realize at the end of the scene that, okay, he mocked them, all of them, for their lunch, but he doesn't have any lunch, this guy. So it says a lot about his family already, and the fact that mocking people, having humor on someone else, is kind of a protection for him. It is his survival mode, So for me, this scene and the one when he really challenges authority with the teacher, those two scenes are really strong and says everything, and they say everything about this character. So, but yeah, he looks really, really old. I thought it was a problem casting this guy, but as you said, now it makes sense. Yeah, maybe it's because he did many times the same classes. I didn't think that way. I was like, okay, why did they took that guy? But yeah, it makes sense now.
What's funny to think about is John Hughes, his kids went to Shermer High. And when you think about it, that Claire got detention for cutting school, but Ferris has been absent 9 times. So Ferris is out there somewhere, and Claire, she drew the short straw and she's stuck in detention. Scarier to think is that Vernon and Ed Rooney work at the same fucking school. So if you think about what's going on with that faculty, we got some problems. No wonder why the kids are fucked up. Cameron's fucking bedridden. This kid's trying to kill himself with a flare gun. It's like, let's look at career day, guys. Let's hire some staff.
I think for me, maybe the weakest point of the film is how the characters end up. That Claire and Bender wind up together, and then that Allison and Andrew wind up together. And I don't know that anybody necessarily had to wind up together. It almost feels like it was shoehorned in there or tacked in, like, okay, we need to have like some type of like romantic element.
Yeah, the American ending.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I didn't think anything of it because this is the movie. It is what it is. Now, being older and seeing more films and having more experience and being a writer and all these other things, if they had just sprinkled a little something and we could see like a little bit more of the attraction between Claire and Bender. She throws him a coy look here and there.
I think they have probably the most apparent sexual tension and chemistry throughout, because we have that exchange about Moliere in the beginning when he's ripping up the book. Then, he's brushing his teeth with her makeup brush, and she's kind of like feeling him out, like, why do you have so many girlfriends? And like, don't you believe in just one guy, one girl? Like, she's, trying to,
she's fishing.
Yeah. And then even just the way they blow up at each other in the sharing circle, it's like, you are a bitch. Bah, 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 bah. He just unloads on her. And like, we know that her mom is, your poor drunk mother in the Caribbean. Clearly, her parents are not on good terms. So that's how she sees the world. Right. I accept that better than Allison and Andrew.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Just based on the psychological foundation that's been laid out of the characters throughout the story.
Yeah.
I feel like every time you have a female character as main character, they feel like there's going to be a love story. You can have male main character without any love story, but when there is a woman around, all the time she ends up in a couple situation. I don't get why, but anyway. But the Andrew and Allison couple, I think it doesn't hurt. It's just the fact that she has to change physically to be attractive. I think that's the sad part of it. There is no makeup.
That might be it. I think, you know what?
I thought she was more attractive the first way around, but that's me.
I take it back. No, because they do have their scene when they're going to get the sodas, and then when she dumps all her shit out of her purse, and then even in the circle, she says like he can't think for himself. Like they have a connection. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's what it is. The fact that Allison had to metamorphosize in order to be attractive, which I don't know, Ali Sheedy.
She was attractive before.
She was in Bad Boys.
Yeah, exactly right.
She was in Bad Boys.
If anything, she could have just maybe brushed her hair, washed out the dandruff, got some new shampoo. Who knows?
A little Head and Shoulders, and she's off to the races.
I love how cool she is too. Like they're running around the halls, and she's just leaning against the wall, like waiting for them to finish running, and then she'll run to catch up. But I love when she steals Bender's lock. She just kind of like casually like takes his lock.
Yeah, pockets it. At the end of the movie, though, when the couples pair off, I said, "Oh, poor Brian. Fucking kid's gonna walk back to his locker and get that flare gun and finish the job. He's all alone."
Yeah. No, he's got Rosie Palm and her 5 sisters. Which, yeah, like when he has that like mid-morning boner that he's, trying to conceal with his hat, We got you, Brian. We understand where you're coming from. You'll have your day.
So let's talk about Paul Gleason.
Let's talk about Paul Gleason.
I just realized
I've watched interviews with this dude, and he is a really good actor because he is nothing like the character, and he's a similar character in Die Hard. Let's be real.
I was just gonna say that. He's douche in Die Hard. Also, he's everywhere he goes. This guy.
Yeah, but if you watch interviews with him, he's like just like a happy-go-lucky guy. So he is a really good actor because he is selling it, in a way that like, oh man. we need a douche. Let's get Paul Gleason from the Breakfast Club. You know, it's like that's probably the fucking conversation that happened in the Die Hard casting. I'm gonna say it right now.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I think that. But when you think about the character arcs of all the kids, Vernon should be a cautionary tale. Like, here's a guy who's not happy with his choices. He's done, and the way he behaves, and now he's just getting more cynical and bitter and salty about everything. And the janitor's like, "What's your problem, guy? I'm just sweeping the floors here, man." He just, like the janitor's got the perspective, which is funny, shows that class system thing again. Because let's face it, Bender's probably going to end up being the janitor of that school. That's usually how those things pan out.
Did you catch in the opening montage that Carl was Man of the Year at Shermer High School in 1969?
Yeah.
So by that logic, Claire is going to be the janitor.
That's what I thought.
That is true.
This is your peak.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. Downhill from here.
Indeed.
And I feel like the montages add to that theme about time. I mean, one of the first shots of the film, like it's the opening credits and we get the David Bowie quote, and then it's a shot of the school. And then the very next shot, I believe, is of a clock ticking. And then there are several shots of the clock in the library showing the passage of time. And then through the montages, there's a number of them throughout the film that show the passage of time. And so it's a constant theme that's capsulated by Vernon and that comment that Allison makes. And yeah, like you said, he's a cautionary tale, like do better with your life. Don't make decisions based on X, Y, and Z. Make them based on, LMNOP. Like don't go looking at the end, go look in the middle and find where you want to go from there.
Yeah.
And this film isn't like super heavy-handed.
No.
About it. It's more so just kind of showing an insight into how people react and how, the dynamics between people can develop and how perspectives can change over a short period of time. It's like judging a book by its cover.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably like the moral of the story right there, is judging a book by its cover, and it takes place in a fucking library. So well done, John Hughes.
It's a movie about your station in life, because you've got Vernon and Carl, who are two very different guys, and Carl's kind of just happy. There's that photo in the beginning, him with the nice combed hair, and he's like, Man of the Year or whatever. And now he's sweeping the floors in the joint. And it's like, that guy could easily climb a bell tower with a rifle, and have an axe to grind with people. But the guy's just sweeping the floor, man. He's just happy in his life. And Vernon's fucking miserable, and he's taking it out on the kids.
And who did Carl want to be when he was young? He wanted to be John Lennon. And you know what? That says quite a bit about his outlook on life. But yeah, Carl, John Kapelos, what a great character actor. I love at the end too, when all the kids are leaving and Bender just turns and he's like, "See you next Saturday."
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. They got a standing date.
I think if the movie was coming out now, the message will still be delivered. I think people will get it. But it's just the stereotype thing. It's nowadays, I feel that people are afraid of showing stereotypes on TV or in theater. So I'm not sure the success will be the same nowadays.
Well, they'd probably change stuff. Claire would have an eating disorder or something. Or, they'd let's get some offenses that are sexier. That's what they would, the executives. Let's really turn this up a notch.
True.
Probably the greatest legacy of this film is a more sophisticated teen-driven movie. When you've got counterparts like Revenge of the Nerds, the way it treated teenagers, was a bit more thought and a bit more depth than I think some of the counterparts of that time.
The film that comes closest to it in that time period that isn't related to John Hughes is Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's another one that kind of tells a teen-oriented story from a teen sort of point of view, as opposed to the isolation, conversational revealing that we get in The Breakfast Club. In Fast Times at Ridgemont High, we're actually experiencing all of those things. We're seeing, the girl losing her virginity. We're seeing the people struggling with work and employment. We're seeing the people struggling with their own identity and their own their grades and everything like that. So I think these two, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Breakfast Club, are kind of very good complements of each other.
Absolutely. And I could totally see Bender buying his weed off of Spicoli.
I think Bender would be the dealer.
Probably. Either way.
The most special thing about this film is the writing, and not even like solely on John Hughes's shoulders, because he was very collaborative with his actors. And if they came up with something for their character, like, let's try it, or yeah, use that or do that. Or how would the character, like, here's the character. What do you have to contribute to this character? Or how would the character say this? And that's where like the film becomes this like 2.5 hour thing, and then it gets whittled back down. There's a lot of room for collaboration in his films because he wants to make the best possible film. And the best way to do that is to cast it right, have a good foundation with the script, and then just show up and do the work every day. So that will about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Stephen Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner. Anne and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and check out what we've been watching and see what we think. And until next time, don't you forget about us.